Hey everyone, Brain Coker here. Today we're going to do a brake pad change. My bike's pretty dirty at the moment. I've been riding it to work lately, and that includes in the rain. And that's how your bike gets dirty. So let's get started. So the first thing we want to do is we want to remove the whole caliper. I mean, with this particular brake, you could take the brake pads out without removing this, but then you wouldn't get the new ones in. So pretty much have to remove the whole thing. So I loosened these bolts earlier. So whoever did this before used Loctite on these locks, on these bolts. So it was pretty tricky to get off, but that's okay. And it's not a bad thing to use Loctite. So get this thing off. Can't use my new Allen keys on this. I have to use one of these old ones because it's such a large diameter, but that's okay. So slide this off, and the next thing we want to do is we want to remove the brake pads from this. So to do that we need a little pair of pliers. So there are two cotter pins here just holding the bolts in place. Remove those, they just pull out. And here's the pressure plate holding on top of that. So after those cotter pins are out, we can just pull these pins out. Easy. Get that one out. And this is not the type of brake that explodes when you pull it to bits, which is good. And here are the brake pads. They're not too bad. I mean, these still have a bit of life on them, but I'm going to change them because I got new brake pads, so why not? The other thing that was a little bit concerning about this when I pulled them out is that they seem to be, one of them's wearing faster than the others, which you want to keep an eye on because you don't want the pistons inside here pressing differential pressure, as it's called. You know, one side's pushing harder than the others. You want them to sort of press at the same amount of pressure. And the other thing is you don't want one of these pistons seizing up and only one of the pistons working. So for that reason, you want to check out the brake pads that you're removing just to make sure that the wear's even across it, that it's not slanted, it's not wearing one side. Harley. So it's not wearing one side more than the other. So it seems pretty even otherwise, so I'm not too much concerned about it. But I'll definitely give it a clean like you should every time you change your brakes anyway. So one thing that I forgot to do is put gloves on because I'm going to use brake cleaner, and the dust that comes off these is carcinogenic apparently, which means it's poisonous in terms of cancer poisonous, so you don't want to mess with it. So let me just grab my gloves. Woohoo! Okay, so brake cleaner, WD-40, whatever. There's lots of brands. This stuff's a little bit poisonous, but it's not as bad as this dust apparently. So we want to give this a good clean. This is something that you don't really want to skimp on, you know. You could just pull these out and then put the new pads straight in, but you know, you want to take care of your brakes, obviously, for obvious reasons. So give it a
critic, but hey, they really respect your talent. Have your manager call my manager and we'll make records together. Level success in entertainment.
Okay, so after you've taken care of that, you want to put a bit of grease on here because these calipers, they obviously they move in and out, you know, to apply pressure on the brake pads to the disc. That's how it works. And so after cleaning, just put a little bit of this grease on there, and I'm using silicone high temperature grease. You know, some websites say that you could, or some people say that you can use copper based grease as well, which I guess is okay. The thing is, you don't want to use any grease that's going to mess with rubber, and I think that's petroleum based grease. So you don't want to use just any grease. You want to use something that's high temperature and silicone grease, and you can buy grease that's specifically for this purpose as well. It's just that I don't have any. Possibly it's just a marketing thing, which is the same product anyway. So I'm going to apply a little bit of grease to these calipers so that they move. Okay, so after you've applied a bit of grease, you want to actually push the pistons back in their place, because the thing is, these brake pads are worn, right, and so they fit. But the new brake pads, they're going to be thicker because they're not worn, and for that reason the pistons are out further than what they should be, which means that if you put the new brake pads in, it won't fit simply because it's too thick. So the first thing we want to do is try to push these back. And it's not too bad. I mean, it doesn't take too much pressure to sort of pull them back in. There's another way that you can do it. You could put the old pads in there and use a screwdriver in there and then jimmy it up like that, but I often find it's not really necessary. Okay, so we've pushed those back in place, and we can install the new brake pads. So let me grab those. New brake pads. Now, I'm not going to go into the debate about which brake pads are better in terms of, you know, organic ones or whatever. These are organic. I just use organic. It's fine. It's fine with me. I like the feel of them. Okay, so we want to put a bit of grease on the back, and the reason is this helps to stop brake squeal. And again, there's special product you can buy for this, but you know, it's essentially grease balls. So grease those up. Anywhere where there's metal touching metal on this thing. And where's the other one? Here it is. Grease on that. Okay. I'm good. Start again. Pull the pressure plate off. Get those brake pads in. Trying not to get grease on the actual front of the pad. You don't want grease on the back. And they're going to be loose because you pulled the pins back, but that's okay. They'll get tight again. Once you start, once we get this back together, we need to pump the brake a little bit. Word of warning, don't pump the brake before you've put this back together. That can lead to problems. So put the pressure plate back on, and we need to get everything lined up to get these pins back through. So they go through the brake pad, through the pressure plate, and through the other brake pad, and out the other side, which was going easy. Same deal on this side. And don't forget, for God's sake, to put these cotter pins back. Now, some people will say, well, you got to use brand new cotter pins. Whatever. These cotter pins are fine. They're not damaged in any way, so I'm happy just to reuse them. Line the holes up to make it easy. Push them in too easy. Okay, now we want to get this back on here. I'm going to use a little bit of Loctite on these. Obviously these are critical bolts. If they come out and you've lost your brakes, well, you know, that's it's not a good look. Just a little bit, you don't want to make a mess. Okay, find that bolt. Get this lined up again. The bolts. Put the washer in place. Line it up. Push it through and get it seated. And there it is. There's the front one done. One last thing that we have to do is that we have to pump the brake, and you'll have to pump it about 3 or 4 times for the hydraulics to get back. And there it is, done. Don't forget to do that step, because you don't want to be hooning down the road and then you're pumping your brake 3 or 4 times, you can't stop. So that's critical before you ride your bike again, that last step. Alright.